Hello there. How you doing, Melanie? So, let's get to your game. Just to let you know how this usually works, I'm going to be reading the rulebook. I'm going to check the components and basically everything you've sent me. And as I will be reading a good deal of the time, I will be silent a good deal of the time. So I really suggest that you download something for speeding up the video. There are a couple of how do you call it that? A couple of plugins for Google Chrome. And so I suggest that you do so and just speed up straight to the parts where I actually say something. Okay? So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy it. Right now I'm just taking a look to see if I find all of the components you're mentioning. Okay. Six Spirit Walker cards, 18 pawns. Okay. I don't think that you need all that much dice. Well, it actually depends if they're going to be rolled at the same time. It might be necessary, but if they won't, just having three and one could be enough. Let's keep going and I'll catch up on that later. Because dice are quite not super expensive. Like everything is it's cheap if you look at them individually, but it can make a game price rise significantly. By the way, ah, I'm going to ask you some questions throughout this, so I suggest that you take quick notes of these questions so that you can answer to me later on the playtest day. So one of these questions is, what are your intentions with how to publish this game? Is it going to be something that you're going to do on your own, or do you already have plans on printing and doing it? How do you plan on advertising it, and so it goes? Let me know, because a couple of the suggestions that I may give can be adapted depending on the reality you're envisioning for the game. Okay, as far as I understand from what you've shown me here, it's like a single board. This is just like a way that you have depicted it in order to facilitate printing, printing and playing, like using an A4 size. Is this correct? All right. So I'm assuming, not necessarily assuming, but the best would be if all of these informations regarding boards and levels and things that you're mentioning here, um, it is best if they are repeated afterwards, because all things that come before the setup in a game usually should be unnecessary skippable information, like information that may be helpful, that may be good, but that can be skipped. And there is one thing that I don't think is, yeah, here it is, victory condition. Okay, doesn't necessarily need to be before the setup. Actually, now thinking of it, I would agree that placing it after setup is better, but I think there are a couple of games that place like the goal right after the introduction. But okay. Oh, by the way, gifts and powers. Why did you mention it here and not before the setup? Because right here you're mentioning board, levels, and then you could mention gifts and powers also. I think. But it all depends because right here we're seeing from top to bottom. You don't have any text box or any resource like that. Maybe this information would be a text box right here besides the setup. It's not part of the setup, but it explains something that is introduced right here. This is what I'm guessing it is. Okay, let me just keep going. Okay. Um, mhm. All right. Besides this order, which I was mentioning, it is also interesting to give visual cues to the reader because this way they will know that, hey, I need to read this. This is rule stuff, and distinguish it from examples and information text or observations and stuff that may be skipped. So it is also very good to separate entirely with specific visual cues, which usually are regular size text for regular size normal text for rules, and smaller size and or italic style text for the other stuff. So I would maybe suggest that this is in italic, but not necessarily because, as I mentioned before, this is at the beginning of the rulebook. It is already kind of interpreted as components and terms. Terms, is that the word for that? Components and keywords introduction. This is actually components, but here you're talking about keywords. So I would just merge the stuff like stuff, game stuff introduction. This is what it is about. But yeah, okay, because as I was mentioning, like players, of course, it's not your goal with the game, I guess, I believe, but players can probably play the game without knowing of this entirely. So this is the theme only. It's not part of the mechanics. This is part of the mechanics. And as I mentioned before, this needs to be mentioned afterwards because right here it is among non-rule stuff. Let's go for the setup. Okay, I usually like to number. Is that the word for that? Yeah, like to count the steps in setup. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so it goes. Also, I really like to adjust everything to a single voice, and you mostly have that. So place, sort, leave, it's so imperative. But right here, each player chooses. This is not the same thing. Each player takes, but this is an exception some games already deal with the same way that you're dealing. I am I am a little picky with this, so I usually choose to, instead of saying take, also no sorry, instead of saying each player chooses, I usually write tell each player or instruct each player to choose, because then you're talking to the same person. Here you're talking to the reader. When you say each player, you're not kind of not talking to the reader, but it's okay to keep it this way. So like take this suggestion with a grain of salt. But yeah, as I was mentioning before, I usually number them. So one, two, three, four, because a setup is a procedural step of the game. Also, the setup is rule stuff, but it is not nothing. No rules should be in the setup because the setup is meant to be read once when you're actually doing things right in front of you, and then it's meant to be completely forgotten. Nobody's going to look for clarifications on the setup section. So you've probably not done this, but this is something that is always good to keep in mind because rollbooks are meant for teaching a player how to learn the game the first time they play, and also for referencing and looking for doubts throughout a gameplay. And if an information is only mentioned in the setup, then you have a problem because players are probably not going to find the answer to their question because it's probably not where they're going to look for it. Place the main board at the center of the table. Isn't that more appropriate? I don't know. Like, I'm Brazilian, English is my second language, so if I say some stupid things regarding writing, just ignore it. Shouldn't it be besides? Okay, if the gem card is ever empty, you shuffle the gem card. No, no, no. This is rule stuff. This should not be on setup. So this is what I was talking about. This does not necessarily need to be like after at some part of the rules. It's best if it is like uh, wherever you have a rule for collecting, for drawing gems, um, for drawing gem cards, or for getting gems because it's right here also. Um, you should have this, not here. Okay? I understand the reasons why you chose here, but this is not the most appropriate place for that. Okay, this second sentence right here. Take your Spirit Walker card with an illustration, name, blah, blah, blah. This is not part of the setup. The instruction is choose a spirit walker and take it. The fact that a spirit walker card has an illustration, a name, and a description, if you really want to say that, you can place this at the game stuff introduction section of the rulebook. But I don't think that you need to do so. Like if someone takes the card, they're going to see that it does have an illustration, a name, and so it goes. At right here. In here too. I usually mention that play proceeds clockwise on the turn explanation. I usually do that, but it's okay if you want to keep it here. But like again, this is in the setup, even though it's acceptable because it's the very last part of it, and it's a part that people are probably not going to have any doubt about. But yeah, just a quick look here to see if I find something. No, let's get back to it. Well, your titles. I know that this is a prototype rulebook, but especially because it is a prototype rulebook, you can benefit much more from bigger fonts on titles and capital letters on titles and distinguishing titles from subtitles. So, for instance, you could have the name of the game right here. Yeah, doesn't make too much of a difference, but it's nice to look at. And now, so introduction in capital letters, components in capital letters, board, levels, level 1, 2, 3, 4, in not capital the same way they are because they are within the components section. Um, I see what you did here, distinguishing this from this, but this italic is is not different enough to make a difference, to be honest. So maybe if you want to do this, the best thing that you could do could be maybe to remove the bold and to, well, maybe make these slightly bigger, the subtitles and the titles, so that it wouldn't be just the italic. But another option could be removing the italic and placing a bullet before it, or anything that looks good, that looks intuitive, visually intuitive to you. So setup in capitals, gifts and powers, I would place this right here before that. Okay, let's keep going. Definitely, this is something that should be before at the component section, game stuff section. Okay, so victory condition in capital letters again. You don't need to say at the end of level 4. Like you can. It's not a big deal, but it's unnecessary, and removing and synthesizing things can make people more prominent towards understanding, towards better understanding the rules, because it's less words echoing in their heads. It, it does make a difference. I usually capitalize after bullets, but it's okay if you want to keep it this way because it seems like you're doing this consistently. So, fine. I usually do not use semicolons, not even colons. I try to avoid them because I think they look too scientific. But you're using them consistently, so yeah, keep it if you like it. Oh, okay. Um, so, another tricky thing, another caveat about Roblox is that the victory conditions section, which must come at the beginning of the explanation, is sort of merged with the end game section, which also must come at the end of the rulebook. So there is no way to remove any of these unless your game is like ridiculously simple. It is not a good idea to just place everything at the end or everything before the explanations before, because explaining before is super important so that people can have a base of understanding of why are they doing everything they're doing, and because the end of the rulebook is the most appropriate place to say when the game ends and what exactly happens step by step when it ends. That's probably like the end of the game of the first time anyone plays the game. They're probably going to get the rulebook and check, especially in a game with so many places for scoring. They're going to check exactly what is everything they need to sum up. And the first place that people are going to look for is at the end of the rulebook at the end game section. So I'm saying this because I don't think that you necessarily need to explain how many points are for each thing right here, because I think that you will need to place this information at the end. But you can have it just the way it is right here if it is explained thoroughly at the end too. And it is important indeed for you to explain, at least to introduce like movement milestones, chakra milestones, character milestones, chakra scores, defeating enemies, gathering gems, and powers. All of this is essential so that people can like get a feel of what they should be looking for in the game. All of the parentheses, you can remove them if you want, but you don't need to. You can be less specific. The same way that you did here, like defeating enemies through encounters with end of level genies worth more points. It didn't say exactly how many points. So you can be less specific than you are in the other parentheses. But again, it's fine if you just keep it the way it is. You see, right here you did exactly what I said before. You just brought and listed what each thing, what are the things that can give you negative energy, but you didn't exactly explain how much is each. But it's all right to keep it this way. Okay, actions. Before calling the action, um, I usually, instead of calling it actions, I call it, well, not only me, but there are a couple of games that call it gameplay or game turn or game round. It depends on the game structure, whether they use game round or game turn or phase one or whatever. But I think that actions is better, is more appropriate as a subsection of the game turn section. And the game turn section, it is very simple, to be honest. Of course, it includes the actions explanation, but yeah, like, so game turn or player turn. On your turn, you roll your pool of dice. Um, After rolling, mhm. Yeah, yeah. So you can just call it player turn instead of actions. I would suggest that at least. And then, okay, search. Mhm. Okay, right here, I think I understand what you mean, but the way that it is written made me a little confused. So choose one of your pawns to advance along its track. Yeah, okay. So right here, you're over explaining things and making things a little more confusing. Remember the thing about equal in the brain? You can just say choose one of your pawns to advance along its respective track. End of story. You don't need to say that it is the central or either chakra track. Like, okay, it's one of your pawns. You have 3 pawns at a time. No need to further explain that. This is important if you haven't already reached the end of it. But that's sort of goes without saying, right? Because if you have reached the end of it, you just cannot move forward until when actually you change the phase of the game, right? So you can remove this and should, and you may remove this. Okay, the font that you're using, it has a very bad italic. I suggest that you change it. Sorry to say that, but it's so hard to see the difference. And so yeah, I really suggest that you change that because you're trying to place some emphasis here, but it's not helping you do that. I usually use bold for these things also, but you can use italic too. It's no problem. It's just important that you do it consistently. And you seem to be doing very well in this. I've seen lots of robots, and yours is so consistent it makes my heart warm. Okay, if you can move, you must move. What do you mean by that? Because right here you're saying choose either to search or to move. But if I can move, I must. So where is the choice? What do I think you mean by that? You mean that if you choose to move, you must move. Um, and what do you mean by at least one space forward? Isn't moving always forward? And isn't like, can people move less than the amount of movement that they have? So what is the thing? What do I think it is? I think that you either choose to search or to move. And if you choose to move, you must move at least one space. But um, if you have like three movement, you can move only one if you want. Is that so? So rethink the way that you're writing it here. We can think about that also on Friday when we play the game and you actually tell me exactly what you mean by that. And I can help you find the best way to word that. And you only apply the effect of the last space the pawn lands, right? You don't need to say only if you moved, because this is within the move section. It goes without saying to. It's part of the move rules. And you already say after movement, apply the effect. So yeah, really goes without saying. This is over explaining. This makes things confusing. It makes people doubt that they have completely understood what you said before. Understand what you mean? What I mean? Meditation is the only way out of hell. Okay, you already said it here with the word must. This is a super nice word. And then you don't need that. So you can just remove this second sentence because it's just over explaining the what you've already said. Pool of dice. Um, isn't dice pool a better way to say that? Final number of success. What do you mean by final? Maybe the best thing would be like the rolled number of success, or the amount of successes rolled. I think the amount of successes rolled is the best way to say. You don't need to say success symbols. You can just call it successes, I think. Must be equal to or higher than the current level. Okay, when you say level, you mean this, right? You can say current level, but as level is a tricky word that is used on so many things across games, I would at least capitalize it to super make sure that players understand that what you mean by that is the level, the board level, or just call it some other way, like board level or body level, or I don't know, something else to make it super clear. Okay? All right. Okay. Okay. So the final number makes more sense now that I see um, this third sentence. So yeah, keep the final number, but the final number of successes, because they do not generate one success symbol, they generate one success per gem spent, because they don't have any specific symbol for the gems to generate on your components. Am I right? But this should come before the second sentence. So this should be the second, this should be the third, because then you have the dice plus the gems spent, and then the final amount of successes. Um, and I really think that this sentence can be made shorter, because the concept is super simple. Spend any amount of gems to generate one success per gem. To add one success to your roll per gem spent. And this sentence right here, it is more connected to this sentence right here than to the other. But okay, like if you fail, your turn ends. If you do meditate successfully, oh, nice. Okay, so you have search, move, and meditate. These three are connected because they are sort of stuff that you do on your turn necessarily. And gather gems, it's slightly different because it's at any point. Um, but yeah, you can just leave it this way. It's okay. But do not call it action, because there are lots of games in which you have four actions on your turn, and you have like these five options of actions that you may do. And this is not what your game is about. Actually, search and move, they are the options. Meditate is sort of a third option when you're forced to do it. But the way that you're going to be spending your turn is not doing actions, is either searching or moving or meditating. And if you want, you may, whatever of these you're doing, you may gather gems. So this is sort of a bonus stuff that you can do. But as everything is pretty simple so far, you can just keep it this way, but do not call it take the gather gems action. Just call it gather gems. There's no limit to the number of times you can gather gems on a single turn. I think that's the best way to phrase it. Hand limit. At the end of your turn, regardless. Okay, so this is not the hand limit section. This is the end turn section. And then you must discard down to 10 gem cards in your hand. Okay. Now, okay, gather gems at any point on your turn. Aid at any point in the game, and cast a spell at any point in your turn. Okay, so we need to group things that are similar. And right now, like before, I was telling you, like, okay, this is simple enough, so you can explain it this way. Okay, I take that back. This is one thing. Gather gems and casting a spell, they are second, different thing. And should be separate accordingly. You can even call it a name, but like maybe like free actions or free. I don't want to use the word actions, but like if you just write their titles with a different color or in a different way, like a text box or something, to make them different from these three, that could be better because you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things listed, and like 5 is sort of like the highest listing number suggested. Like go from 3 to 5. Try never to pass that threshold because players get lost somehow. Readers, they do get lost. So if you have more than 5, even 5 is a little too much depending on the size of the thing. But if you have more than 5, do separate it further into other groups, such as main things and peripheral things. And aid is not included because it's different. It's out of a player turn. Okay? Or, okay, this, I'm seeing it as a third completely different thing because it's the end turn and should be at the end. But gather gems and cast a spell, they are super similar at any point on your turn. The 3 gem cards must be different. The spell. When you say cast a spell, it sounds like there are spell cards or something like that, but it's not the case. So maybe changing spell for something, some other word, but you don't need to do that. This is just me like being wary of um, game tropes, such as when I told you to not use the word action. But I think that not using action is much more important than not using spell. And okay, at any point. So right here, There's no limit to the number of times you can do that. Right here, you didn't mention if there is a limit or not. So if you didn't mention, it's probably because you can only do it once, but you didn't say you could only do it once. So that is probably because you can do it as many times as you want. I don't know. What I'm trying to say is either remove this or add this to all of these. But what I think is the best is create another section for let's call it free actions for now, but try to come up with something different other than action. And at the first sentence of it, you say, of course, if it applies to all of them, but I think they do, you say, free actions may be done at any point on a player's turn and as many times as the player wants. You either do that and you can remove it from the beginning and from here, or you explain it all the time. The same way that you did here. At any point during, at any point, at any point. But you should say at any point during and as many times as you want. Or you can just not say that, because if you don't say it is limited, people are going to understand as being unlimited. Okay? But you need to remove this, because if it is written here and not written in the others, people are going to have doubts about it. And I would change the way that you phrase the aid. Instead of saying that at any point during the game you may give another player, I would keep the focus on the active player, on the player whose turn it is. So at any point during your turn, you may, no. Oh, by the way, you should place you may discard, because you're using you may cast. This repeating the structure is always good. Like the exact structure, if you mean the exact same thing. At any point in your turn, you may discard. At any point in your turn, you may cast a spell. At any point during your turn, you may receive a gem from another player. You cannot refuse. If a player wants to give you a gem, you cannot refuse. They immediately gain. No. You see how what's the importance in this? Because then you're talking about the player, their turn. It's the same voice as in gather gems, aid, and casting a spell. Yeah, I think I made my point here. Let's just keep going. I haven't yet read this. Three different types of gem cards. I think it's important that you overstate that it is different types, because it sounds like it is, but it's not super clear. Oh, each of the three gem cards must be different. Okay, you can remove this parenthesis and just say three different types of gem cards, or three gem cards of different types from your hand. Much smaller sentence. So two of the same to get a gem, and with a gem you can get one success, and three different to get two success. Bring a growth action. What is a growth action? I think that you have changed some wording. Chakra growth space. Okay, there are growth spaces, but there are no growth actions. I don't really know for movement, growth, and combat. Movement, growth. Really, what is a growth action? Oh, increase your character stats. A growth action. Yeah. Again, I wouldn't call it an action. And I think that it needs, like you're mentioning it a lot, it probably needs a section of itself. But okay. Because so far, the only thing that I see that uses successes is meditating. But probably is an entirely different thing. Yeah, okay. So right here ends, like after all of this comes the end phase, the end turn section right here, and ends the player turn phase, the player turn section in the rulebook. And now you have some other rules for specific stuff. Let's see if we can find some better ways of grouping them. Well, let me just learn them before. Let me take a look at how far are we. Okay, 1 hour. We're good. It's weird because you're going down. Should be the opposite, right? Should feel like the opposite at least. Yeah, from down and upwards. So all of this writings should be inverted, but it's fine. It's okay. We can manage that. Let me just pause for a while. All right, back to duty. So here's where we were. Okay, so this seems like a summary of things, but not a full explanation, right? I'm not saying anything because so far it's okay. I need to see if you further explain things afterwards. Okay, growth, stat or chakra progress increases. I think that this should be here. Where is it? During a growth, parenthesis, chakra or stat or chakra progress increase. It should be here. Don't call it growth action, just call it growth. And place the parenthesis here. Why here? Because this is the first place that you mention it. And it doesn't make sense to explain casting a spell afterwards. This is the place for explaining it. But you haven't yet explained growth. So it's nice to briefly explain what it is. So that because it's further down. And then you don't need to use the parentheses anymore in any place that you call it. So and instead of saying increase your character stats a growth action, I would call it perform a character stats growth. Perform a chakra progress growth. Then you don't need that afterwards. I would even go as to say grow your character stats, but then I'd rather just keep the same keyword, growth. Grow and growth, it diminishes the solidness of the keyword. Solidity. I'm not sure solidness exists. Solitude. No, solitude, it's, yeah, well, never mind. Okay, your pool of dice determines the success. The outcome of dice could apply to a search, movement, growth, meditation, or combat. You start with 3 dice, you always roll. All of these, they are unnecessary information. They are not that, like, I've managed to read and understand all of the rules regarding dice without this explanation. If you want to have this information, you can place it right here at the game stuff, component stuff. But don't place it right here because players can skip this. At the start of level 2, add the level 2 die to your pool. At the start of level 3, add the level 3 die. Okay. Instead of explaining this on a dice section, you could explain this when you're explaining the central track and the chakra tracks, because actually both this, these, and these, they are a subpart of movement, sort of. I was going to say that afterwards, but I'm saying it already. But yeah, let's keep going to see if there's any other, like, okay, important stuff to have here that could only belong to a dice section. Okay, each die has a different distribution of symbols. Yeah, if you have a section for outcome of rolls, everything could be in there, both the card symbols and the negative symbols. If you choose to take a search action, okay, this is explained already. It's already here. Draw and ignore the others. You don't like this. Okay, I'm being very, very blunt here. You must remove this section. I'm going to take a look if there's anything else, but so far the only important thing is this, and this can belong to another section. Even this, I'm thinking that you explain this on the outcome of row section. And don't call it outcome of rows, call it row outcome. Sounds, I don't know, sounds better to me. Well, never mind. But okay, do not repeat yourself over. It doesn't add to the rules, makes the rule book longer, makes people more tired, and makes it easier for people to choose to try to skip a section or a paragraph when they might lose a couple of important rules. Because if you read like 3 paragraphs in a row with information that you already know, you sort of start pondering about skipping the next paragraph, skipping all the way to the next section. And not necessarily it's this is a good thing to do. What? Your swiftness stat may add a number of success symbols. Okay. Okay, this information is super important. Like super important. Um, it needs to be right here in move and in what's the other one? Meditate? No, in growth. Yeah, I didn't explain growth yet. Um, but it's super important if it can add symbols. Spend 1 inspiration point to re-roll 1 die. When? Okay, if this can be done anytime on your turn. This does not belong here. It belongs on the gather aid, cast a spell section. So it's another thing. It's a fourth thing that can be done. The level 3 has 2 additional symbols. Gain inspiration and lose inspiration. Yeah. Well, this can be explained on the outcome of rolls too. So all of these out. Anything that I mentioned go to their appropriate spaces, but there's no more dice section. Let's go for the outcome of rolls, which will be a section. And this probably will have to be made bigger. I don't know. You must draw cards instead of moving. What? Search is about drawing cards. Move is about moving. But you choose either to do one or another. If you fail to, oh yeah, okay, this is the first roll. Okay, it's you need to differentiate this rolling, which is the turn roll, from the challenge rolls, which is the meditation roll and the growth roll. And drawing cards instead of moving, this is not failing. It's not a negative symbol. Actually, right here, you shouldn't talk about the turn roll. You should focus on the challenge rolls, or at least differentiate them. So the turn roll. In the turn roll, it's already explained above. Barara, barara. This symbol is for that, that symbol is for this. So this thing right here, you would include it here. So turn roll, these are the symbols. Yeah. Just wait a second. After rolling, you may spend inspiration points to re-roll dice. Oh, this is explained here already. So you don't need to explain that, to include that in here. Unless inspiration can be used to re-roll any dice in any moment. Then it should be there and not here. If it only affects the turn roll, then it should be here. If it affects any roll, it should be here. Okay, let's keep going. So in order to move, I need to roll successes? How many successes do I use to move? I'm not sure now. Outcome of rolls. Okay, let's see that. Okay. Okay, okay, I got it. So maybe, so maybe you shouldn't separate them from turn roll and challenge rolls. You can keep it this way. Must draw cards instead of moving. Okay. Move up to that number of spaces. You must move at least one space if you can. Okay, so, and add any success symbols from your swiftness stat. Okay. Mm-hmm. Let me take a look. Okay, so in movement, you were very reductionist and you didn't explain how it worked. You just said, see outcome of rolls. In meditate, you took the other, you did the opposite. Because you explain it right here. You don't need to see the outcome of rolls. So I think that you can kind of make this a little shorter because you don't need to re-explain what is already explained on the outcome of rolls. Okay, but not a big deal. Let's keep looking here. Two times that number to your strength stat. Yeah, the way that you're phrasing combat is quite different than the way that you phrase the other sections. Let me take a look here. Strength. Is it +1 or +2? Oh, the +2 is scoring, right? Yeah, you need to differentiate it in some way. I can see that. It's clear enough. It's super clear for a prototype, but not for a full game. But yeah, I get it. Two times that number. Which number? The number of successes. And why add it to the strength stat? Why don't you say like during combat, um, use that number, parenthesis, add any success symbols from your strength stat. Or instead of doing that, we can just say increase the stat or chakra progress by that number added to your self-knowledge stat. Move up to that number of spaces added to your swiftness stat. I think this is even better. The way that you do it here, it's like 4 words when here it's quite more. But I'd use the very same sentence structure for this, this, and this. So during this, do that added to that stat. And I'd even go as far as to say that during meditation, consider that added to the amount of gems that you have discarded, that you have used. You probably need to have a dice explanation with its sections and image, like a dice right here, and like card symbol, ta-na-na symbol, ta-na-na symbol. Or even better, instead of saying card symbols, just like ignore any and place the symbol right here. This is the best way that you could do it. You wouldn't even need the images. You wouldn't even need to have uh, this right here. Like the outcome of roles is self-sufficient the way it is. If you just explain the symbols in this way. Yeah, everything is super clear right here. Super clear, super concise with the suggestions that I have given. Okay, character sheet. I think that central track and chakra tracks, this should be a text box included besides the move section. Okay? Because this is not super explaining anything. It's just like sort of introducing, and anything that happens here happens during a move phase. So it's actually part of this. No dice part, outcome of roles, okay, there is a part for that, and character sheet, you're probably going to need that. Uh-huh. Why don't you use the same wording? Add success symbols, adds na na na, adds na na, or just increases, increases, increases. Or just like enhances combat capacities, enhances movement, enhances growth. It's super wordy the way that it is right here. And you don't need this parenthesis anymore. It's already explained before, as I mentioned. And by the way, to be very honest with you, neither of these are important. You can just remove all of these three because they are already explained on the outcome of roles. It's here, the importance of each stat. And if you think it's important to have any reminder of what they do, it's here. You have a very, very good player aid right here. So I would really suggest that you just remove this. Stats. When you land on a stats growth space or chakra, on the chakra track, you may choose which stat you wish to grow. Uh, okay. This is not the stats section. This is the growth section. Okay? Let's make it clear. Because this is what you needed to explain before. What is growth? How does it work? But actually, it's also not super important because like you can have that, it's okay, but you already mentioned it in the outcome of row section. Increase as stat or chakra progress by that number. Stat or chakra. Survival growth, stats growth. Stats you choose. Survival you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, I take that back. Sort of. Do make a growth section. It's not a stats, it's a growth section. And include in here what happens when it's not a stats growth, which you probably explained right here, I guess. Yeah. Chakra growth space on the chakra track. Okay, chakra growth. As far as I know, survival, pleasure, willpower, love, truth, insight, and cosmic energy, they're not chakras. They are something else. Uh, um, so I wouldn't call it chakra growth. Even though you're calling it chakra progress, yeah, calling it chakra progress make you liable for calling it chakra growth if you want. But you're already using the word chakra in lots of places. And again, what is chakra? Its roots, sacral, solar plexus, heart, throat, third eye, and crown. These are chakras. So chakra growth instead should probably be um, ability. I don't know, like survival, pleasure, willpower, love, truth, virtues. Maybe. I think that virtues is the better way to say that. Or any word that you choose. But I think that chakra is not the best word for this. And yeah, okay. But I think that virtues, I'm going to call it virtues for the sake of better differentiating what I mean. Okay? So right here on the growth section, without this growth written in here, when you land on a stats growth space, when you land on a virtue growth space, row and increase the corresponding track accordingly. Chakra block space. You don't need to talk about determining score before the end phase. Oh, chakra block. Okay. Okay, in English we have this really bad thing which like block for blocking is the same word as block for a block. So when you mention chakra block, I thought that it was a block, a rectangle. But yeah, Thinking of it, I don't think that there is a better word than block. So I'm sorry because your game is in English, not in Portuguese, because we have bloco and bloqueio. Bloqueio is block for blocking, and bloco is block for rectangle, solid, or stuff like that. But it's okay. It's easy to understand one. I have very quickly solved my doubt here. Whenever you land on a chakra block space, increase. Yeah, it's not actually growth, right? Increase the corresponding chakra block by 2. How do I increase my chakra block by 2 if there is only one space in here? Well, I guess I just don't roll anything, so I can only pass through each of them once. Okay, okay, I got it. But then don't call it increase by 1. Oh, by the wait. Increase by 2. What do you mean increase by 2? Yeah, no idea what you mean by that. I would just say mark the chakra block. So if you mean anything other than just marking it down, let me know because I didn't understand. Okay, chakra score, we see that afterwards. Let me take a look at powers. Particular combinations. At any time during the game. You sure you want it at any time during the game, or you want that at any time during your turn throughout the game? Because when you let people do things on other players' turns, things can get nasty and weird to explain. So if you want that, okay. Explain it this way, probably after the the gather aid cast section. If it is any point in the game, you can probably just like not change the aid the way that I've suggested and place aid alongside with using powers for things that can be done anytime in the game. But if you think it's better to just restrict players from doing it only on their turns, then just place it there alongside with the others. At the end of the game, gain blah blah blah. No, don't say that. At the end of the game, you explain at the end of the game. Okay? You've already explained in the goal section right here that these things do earn you points. Throughout the rules right here, forget about score. You don't need to mention it anywhere. People will only have to know that at the very end of the game. So it's already pre-mentioned at the victory conditions, which I usually call goal, but it's okay to call it that. And it is going to be thoroughly explained at the end game section. Do not explain it anywhere else because it's not something players are going to have to bother about. And if you only explain right here in the middle, well, that's a problem because then at the end of the game, they're not going to find, they're going to be like looking all over through the rule book. Where is the information about how do I earn points for this? So victory points earning should be only should be all together at the end. Okay, where do I mark? Okay, first and second upgrades unlocked. Got it. And it all should probably be in the cards, I guess. Carnelian plus Jade plus one raw card. Carnelian plus Lapis, two gem cards equals two. Okay, good. Got it. Movement milestones first. Oh, okay. Movement milestone. You do explain that, right? Yeah, it's here. Okay, this is regarding movement again. So this should probably be all the way up here alongside the, where is it? Alongside the central track and the chakra tracks besides the movement section. This is where it should really be. Inspiration, I've already talked about it. If it can be done on any reroll, it should be alongside powers and alongside aid and cast a spell and the other things, the other free things. And if it is only done at the beginning of your turn, it is already explained right there. Okay, notation. All right, let me be frank with you. I do not think necessarily that your game is going to be using character sheets. Maybe inspiration. It's going to be a token. So you don't need to worry too much about how to write it down right here. But yeah, for now, it's good. But if you don't have that, if it's just a token, this can be explained in a, well, either way, like whenever you say spend one inspiration, instead of saying spend, you can say cross one inspiration on your character sheet. And when you say gain inspiration, you can just like replace it to add a line. So neither of these should necessarily have a specific section. It all can be explained on whenever inspiration is mentioned. Feel a balance, a gem, or go to hell. What is balance? Okay. Okay, you don't need to say this right here. Say it afterwards. You didn't even say what a balance test is, what a gem test is, or what hell is. So this should be explained afterwards and not on its own section. I've already talked about these. I've already talked about this, but let me take a look at the sentence structure. Okay, so I've already mentioned this should be explained right there. All right, tests. Okay, let me take that back. Instead of having instead of having chakra tracks and central track besides movement, because it's too much information, because these link to everything else we're seeing here, all the way to tests. So instead, have first the turn phase, the turn section, then the outcome of roles section, capitalized, like big title, and then the game board section or something like that. You don't need to have the character sheet section actually, um, because people can read that from their own character sheet. So this can be removed entirely. If you want to have this, you can have it like right here at the beginning. But I'm going to dispose of it entirely. And then, so turn phase, like player turn, roles outcome, and board, game board. And then on game board, you begin with these two things and go on to say, let me check here, go on to explain what growth is, and well, powers will be above, inspiration will be above, negative energy will be below, chakra scores will be, where will it be? Will be inside of the growth section. Milestones, okay, so the first one, which will actually have to be used. So those two, growth, milestones, and tests. So brief explanation of the middle track, the middle track and the chakra tracks. Growth, milestones, tests. Because what exactly you're explaining? You're explaining the effects of the things. And after tests, encounters, of course, which are exactly what you're listing here, right? Okay, let me keep going because I think you get what I mean. And don't get me wrong, your rulebook is good the way it is, but it can be made much better if it's not just like a salad of titles, because this is what it is right now. Like from here on, central track, chakra tracks, dice, and outcome of roles and character sheet and stats and powers. Um, well, it's not exactly a super salad because I can see your logic here. Like stats, powers, inspiration, negative energy, chakra scores, and milestones, they all belong, they are all inside the character sheet. But I think that the game flow is not necessarily better explained component by component as you're doing. I think the game flow can be better explained in the way that I've explained before. The things that players can do, outcome of roles because it's simple resolution of stuff, and then the results of movement, which are the main way to progress in the game. Interesting. So you're saying at the end of each level, but you didn't mention how people pass from one level to another, except for right there at the beginning. Remember what I mentioned? This needs to be explained somewhere. I'm going to take a look at the genie part because maybe you've explained it there. But if you did, the genie part should be before the gem tests. You don't need to place the balance test and the gem test at the same section. They're completely different things. One is a space, the other is a consequence of a genie battle, of a successful genie battle. So yeah, don't even call it a gem test. Call it something else to make them seemingly different, because they are. So this is a consequence of genies. Let's place it after the genies. Well, not necessarily. Okay, let me come back here. As soon as the player reaches the end of the central track and defeats the genie. Okay. Every now and then I'm super afraid that, oh my God, is it recording? Am I talking to myself in my room for a long time? But no, yeah, I'm always relieved to see it actually recording. So back to it. Sorry. Um, okay, you didn't explain it. You need to explain it right here in the Genie section. This is a variant, this is an appendix, so of course it's not going to be in here. Um, so yeah, it's utterly important that you have this information. Um, Actually, yeah, all of this information, this complete set of information right here in the Genie section. Do you see how this sentence, some events cause you, blah, 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 and this sentence, if the condition is not met, they're contradictory because some events cause you to fail the encounter if you fail to meet the condition. If the condition is not met, that is, if you fail to meet the condition, the event has no effect. But then you would fail the encounter and go to hell. So these are two completely different things, and it seems like this sentence cancels the previous one. So think about phrasing it in a better way. If there are two different things, if some events nothing happens when you fail to meet the conditions, and some other events something do happen and you go to hell, um, make it clear. They're two completely different things. Some events do this, some events do that. Okay. Um, okay. I would say that combat should be explained after genies, but never mind. It's so close that it doesn't make a difference. Best to explain it right here, and then you just go on. Okay, okay. Now I've got some problems with your game. You have lots of things in your game, right? So, first thing, let's go sentence by sentence. Combat is resolved by comparing total strength to the strength value of the revealed enemy. Okay, good. This is new information. Your total strength is your die roll plus your strength stat. No, this is this shouldn't be here. Actually, instead of this, you should have a parenthesis C. What's the name of that? C outcome of rows section, because everything is right there. Okay, so centralize, send people there. Um, then you may also spend up to 3 gems to add 2 per gem to your total strength. Why? You already have lots of special things that people may do on different steps. Like, remember, we were adding at the beginning, we had only one thing that could be done at any point during your turn. Then, oh, there's a second thing that can happen. Oh, there's another thing which has 4 ways of happening. And to meditate, you can also like generate more successes per gem, and but you only generate 1 success per gem spent on meditations, and on gathering gems it's 2 matching gems, and on casting a spell it's 3 different gems, and on a combat it's up to 3. Like, you have a limit. See, everything is so similar, but they're different. So can't you try to find a role like one size fits all, or at least 2 or 3 sizes fit all? I really think that your game will benefit by miles with this, because it's absolutely impossible to memorize all of the possibilities that you have on each specific scenario. I think that the best way that you did it, like casting a spell having 4 different ways to do that, it's it's sort of okay, because the cost is the same regardless. And it's like, okay, you can do this, and this is useful on various on various ways, but this is the cost. Okay, so you can make your movement better, you can make your growth better, you can make an encounter better, and you can make a combat better, a genie, an encounter with a genie better, by spending 3 different gems from my hand. So I know that 3 different gems are useful all the time, and I know, like, just in order to have a different way to do things, 2 matching gems can I can get the gem. So it's 2 uses for the gem cards. This is super nice. There are a couple of other uses, but these are 2 like all around uses. But then you have this, which is fine. I was fine with that. Like it's sort of like the meditation um, stat. So strength is for combat, swiftness for movement, self-knowledge for growth, and actual gems for meditation. Okay, all right. But then you come with this. It's too much, you know. I don't think that this adds to the game. Of course, I need to play the game to know for sure, but I'm very inclined towards believing that this is an overcomplication of the game. By the way, um, no, never mind. I was going to say that do you need to make it two times the number of successes plus the strength stat? Yeah, no, okay, I'll go for that. I'll go for that. Why make it two times the number of success plus the strength stat when you can simply make it the same as it is in where is it? In movement and in growth, just like roll plus the stat. And if you want this, the roll to have a higher impact, you can just instead reduce the amount of strength gained. So just like you can place like plus a half, or I don't know, plus a plus one every six spaces, or something like that. Plus a half is okay, you know, it's understandable, but it's easier to digest, you know. Everything is equal. You roll and add this to the successes. And you can also make the enemies weaker. Like if you make this plus a half, make just the number of successes, and reduce the strength of every opponent by half. And then you make it super like it's not as if it was overcomplicated before, but it was a little complicated. It was one slight glimpse of complication, and you don't need that. You can just adjust the things that player don't need to remember and memorize. The rules the player need to memorize. The the modifier and the enemy strength they don't need to memorize. It's printed on the card and on the character sheet. So yeah, that's that's my 50 cents about this. Not only 2 cents. Is it five? I never remember. Okay, let's go back to that. And again, I would totally remove this. If you really want to have a way to add to spend gems to add to your total strength, I would do it exactly the way meditation does, or I would do it yeah, because I'm mistaking gems for gem cards. I was going to say that I was going to use the spell casting stuff, but yeah, try to make it the same way that meditation does. Like let people why only up to three? If someone spends four gems, they're probably very bad situation. So just let them spend as many as they want. It's going to be bad. They're not going to do this all the time, or if they don't need to. And it doesn't need to add two if you just like cut everything in half, as I said before. But honestly, I don't like the fact that spending gems can be used in combat and in meditation, and not in the other stuff. Like, why don't you just simply do this for all things, for both movement and growth and combat and meditation? It's a simple general rule. You may spend gems to add successes to all of them. Ta-da! Simple. So it's wow. This is much better, much better. Think of it, like picture it in your head. You have four kinds of things that players do. Meditation, which is not linked. Okay, so four things that players do, an outcome of rolls. On each of the four things, you roll all of your die and sum all of the successes. It's one per success plus one per stat modifier for the specific stat modifiers of each. There's one stat for number one stat for number two, one stat for number three, and no stat for meditation, which is number four. And plus one for each gem spent. And this is a general rule for everything. And people are not going to over abuse it because they need those gems for stuff. Don't you think that things might work this way? I think that they might. Try it. Okay, let's keep going. Reaching the end. No need to talk about score. Like just keep it in front of you. Okay. You've probably chosen this word for a very specific reason. It's probably the word that is used among this sort of literature. But hell is a strong word. Going to hell is even like sort of swearing, right? Not that I mind about it. I don't mind, but it sounds aggressive, you know? Go to hell. Um, so do you really need to call it hell? I think that you can remove the word hell and remove the word inactive and choose a better word in the middle, which could be, for instance, in turmoil, in you are in yeah, turmoil is a good thing, or any synonym. You are unbalanced, yeah, but you're already using balance in the game, but yeah, something that is the opposite of concentrated. And then you can use that word, and you don't even need to call it hell, because what exactly is that? Well, that is becoming inactive, um, and increasing the negative energy. So yeah, I think this is a simpler concept. Either way, like whether you stick with to hell or whatever you choose, hell and inactive are the same thing in your game. They can have the same name. So I would suggest you to do that. And instead of having this, like, what does this section explain that you haven't explained before? Um, Increase your negative energy by 1. Okay, this is new. Lay it to its side to indicate it's inactive. This is not exactly, because it's two things. Okay, you won't be able to search or move. This is already explained before when you're talking about being inactive. Right here, I think. If your main spirit is in inactive state, you can only meditate. Let's call it turmoil. I like turmoil. If your main spirit walker is in turmoil, you can only meditate. There's a word that's coming to mind. He's in agony. It sounds even worse. Um, well, um, so you can remove this entirely, because how can you go to hell? As far as I remember, there are two ways to go to hell, which are through combat and through, oh, events too. Yeah, there are a couple of them that do this, but this can be explained in the card and the balance tests, right? No, actually, you just generate negative energy right here. Yeah. So there are only two ways: combat and events. You can explain that right here. Instead of saying go to hell, you say become inactive and increase your negative energy by 1. Ta-da! Simple as that. No need for this section anymore. Um, no need to explain this. It's already explained on the cast a spell section. Okay. No need to say this, but okay if you want to. Like, the only important part of this paragraph is combat functions the same as with other enemies. If you fail an encounter with a genie, actually, the important thing is combat with genies function the same as with other enemies, but if you fail, you do not become inactive and lose 1 negative energy. Mm-hmm. Okay, one very important thing. If I am in a genie space, I don't need to move. But what if I don't roll any success in my first 3 die, my first roll? I don't roll any success. So I would supposedly be forced to search. But actually, as I'm already in the genie space, I can face it. I can try to battle it. Or do I need to have at least 1 success because activating the space is part of it? It needs to be explained in some way, and it needs to be taken into account right here. You must draw cards instead of moving. Actually, not. If I don't need to roll successes in order to fight a genie. Instead of saying this, if I can't fight a genie without any successes for movement, I would change this sentence to um, you cannot move. Yeah, you cannot move, you don't grow, or you lose combat. Okay. Well, yeah, this is a question you need to answer to me during your playtest. And okay, let's just take a quick look at the beginner variant. And to be honest, well, we have more time. I can take a look at the other components. I'll take a brief look at them. But I think that these, I needed to have some idea on them. But specifically looking at each of them, I don't think that it won't be, I don't think that it will be super important throughout the, this is maybe better to do during the playtest. Instead of saying remove health from game, say remove inactivity from the game. And as such, the meditate action is no longer required. This is just like the same thing. Okay, so you can just have one bullet for this. Okay, I understand this, but be aware of the following fact. Um, Players might play this variant the first time they play. And if it is boring, players won't want to play your game anymore. This is important, and I cannot stress this more because I have published a game which has lots oh, by the way, I think you would like the game. It's called Tao Long, and it's all based on the I Ching and the eight trigrams of Taoism. I think you might probably like it, even though it's not it's less Buddhist, more Taoist, but yeah, nice uh, mystical stuff. But in that game, there are plenty of scenarios for the dragons to battle on, and we have decided to create one scenario with no obstacles, so no portals, no rocks, nothing for beginners who are already struggling with the basic rules of the game and don't feel like learning the obstacle rules. And we have received quite a good amount of negative reviews for that because people just play the game once when they don't like it. And if you suggest a boring version of your game for the first time that people play, people might not give it a second chance. And then people will just have a bad impression of your game. Tao Long has very different, very, yeah, very different reviews, ratings, and like there are a lot. Of course, it's an abstract game. Not everybody likes abstract games. It's sort of abstract games are sort of like no luck games, usually two player, usually perfect information, and not everybody likes it. It's a more Zen-like game, and due to the game being very pretty, some people that are not usually into that kind of games ended up buying it, so they didn't enjoy it too much. But lots of people say that it's super slow or that it doesn't progress and stuff like that, and that's not true. That's true if you play the game wrong or if you play on that damn scenario. So on the second print of the game, the second edition of the game, we're removing that scenario and including a more interesting scenario because, like, hey, you have already learned all of the rules of the game so far. So, like, what is learning, like, two more paragraphs for learning what rocks do and what portals do? So, in your game, two things. First, if you want to make a beginner variant for newcomers, for younger players, it's a completely different thing. But for newcomers, usually just explain the beginner variant and then you explain the advanced variant afterwards. But in your game, dude, I don't think that you need that. Like, it's super easy to understand chakra scores. It's super easy to understand meditation. It's super easy to understand balance tests and gem tests. So why remove it? So yeah, that's my suggestion for you. And if you want to make like a child version of your game, then you suggest this. Okay? Uh, but yeah, I think you have just removed some parts of your game which are not that complicated, to be honest. Like meditation can be a little frustrating, can be a little punishing. Hell in meditation. So maybe that could be something to remove. But chakra scores? The only problem with that is that they're sort of boring because they don't do much. They're just score. But we can take a look at that. Like if they're really boring, they should be removed altogether or changed. Balance tests, that seems very nice, to be honest. Like you have to have a balance of your stats and your gems. And especially with the being able to spend gems for anything, as I have suggested to you, and I really hope you liked it. Because then people will be thinking, oh, I can spend this gem to do this, but then, oh my God, I'm going to be suffering on my balance tests and on my gem tests. So, yeah, I don't think that you need to change anything, to be honest, for now. For now. And one final very important thing on your game. Remember that I've said lots of times during your rulebook that don't explain scoring here, don't explain scoring here, explain at the end game section. You don't have an end game section, girl. So you need to have that. It's good, it's polite. Like it brings closure to the rulebook, you know? Because if you don't do that, your rulebook right now it's ending in hell. Is that what you want? So create an endgame section and place all of the scoring stuff in there. Okay? And yeah, I'm not going to take a look at all of these other things. I'm going to take a look at that during our gameplay. And I may take a look at that afterwards if you want me to check for balance. But that is always better after playing the game, to be honest. And yeah, I'll take a quick look if there's anything that I didn't understand or that I don't remember. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think everything's okay. Yeah, this is basically all of the components, right? That you have translated to this. Hmm. Okay, quite honest. I like the game. I like the concept. It seems to be in a good place. I hope that it is as solid as it seems because well, sometimes it's not, right? Prototypes are always prototypes, and I think it's going to be way easier to create this prototype than what we were thinking because it's actually just the cards. I don't even need to bother too much about the dice. I'm actually going to create it with regular dice, not going to make anything special for them, because if eventually you want to change these charts, you can just, oh no, I cannot do that because these, oh, okay, I just get three different colors instead of three red ones. All right, yeah, good enough. I'll see you next time. It's good, 2 hours 23. We'll have a couple of a good time for creating the prototype. I think we're going to have plenty of time for the playtest. So see you next time. I hope you've enjoyed it and see you Friday, actually. Goodbye.